Ignite to Impact.
You're listening to Ignite to Impact, a podcast to educate and inspire positive, meaningful change within ourselves and in others. I'm Dr. Geneva, leadership coach, author, and the vibrant life architect, helping women over 50 design their next best life. We sit down with influencers to find out how they do what they do to make an impact. Now, have any of you heard of the term VUCA? VUCA? It stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. VUCA. It's a term coined in 1987 to describe what the environment was then. And trust me, that description fits for even today. Well, we're going to hear how leaders and people of influence can equip themselves to deal with all this volatility, uncertainty, and ambiguity from someone who is expert in the area, Dr. Towanna Burrous, who's president of CoachDiversity Institute. She's also a best-selling author, training, and a professionally certified coach based in Washington, D.C. She's a sought-after executive coach and with a mission to empower communities through her executive coaching. I just love the fact that she's laser focused on helping individuals and organizations with their vision, with their tactical direction, and also with helping leaders become equipped with the skills and competencies needed to excel in that environment that I talked about, that one that has volatility and uncertainty in it. So we're going to have a great conversation. And how are you, Towanna?
Oh, Dr. Geneva, I am wonderful. Thank you for having me on your podcast. The Ignite to Impact audience, I have heard a few of your episodes, and I am so excited to join you today.
Well, thank you so much. And I want to let everyone know that Towanna did her undergrad work at Howard University, got her master's in science from the University of Pennsylvania, has a doctorate of divinity, and is working on another doctorate in education from the University of Pennsylvania. So she comes well qualified. So Dr. Towanna, we want you to know that we're, just so excited to learn about how leaders and influencers can deal with today's challenging environment. So let's get started right away with whatever tips and strategies you have for us for leaders.
I love the way that you opened the conversation with the VUCA acronym. A number of people are not familiar with it, and I'm glad you actually spelled it out, because right now, because we are in such a dynamically changing environment globally, culturally, that leaders and influencers or also change agents really have to consider how they are leading in this 21st century environment. They have to reconsider what skills and what competencies they need to upgrade or become more educated, to become more refreshed, so that they can move their companies beyond the competitive edge. Because we're so stuck sometimes in the current state that we don't take a capture of what potentially could happen in future state. And so being able to look at the fact that we are reliving a season where diversity is a status. That is a status quo. We are diverse. However, how we approach inclusion, how we approach uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity, volatility, which is that whole VUCA acronym.
Mm-hmm.
How we do that as leaders and influencers is so important right now.
Yes. Things have changed. I've been in leadership for 40 plus years, and things are changing and evolving. So and what you say about how leaders need to relook at what they're doing, I think is so critical. What do we tell leaders today about what do they look at? What is it they're re-looking at?
Right. The first thing I would say, I always want leaders to first look at how inclusive they are. So we were trained, I have 2 decades of leadership and management behind me. And we as leaders were taught in one generation that we were to know it all and to make the decisions. Mm-hmm. Then we were taught that to be the smartest leader in the room, you had to know where to find the information. Mm-hmm. Then we were taught to go back to being the only one in the room who knew how to lead and guide. Well, right now, where we are, is to readjust that mindset and ask yourself, how inclusive are you so that you can create a team collaboration, so that you are leading with committee, where you are not the only one making the decisions. Sure, you have the ultimate decision at the top to make. However, have you created community of conversation so that some of the things that, as far as leading in a time of uncertainty, that this committee or community of leadership that are under you have contributed their brilliance, so that you are an informed leader, so that you can make decisions to advance the company or the organization beyond the competitive edge. Mm-hmm. You are responsible, but how inclusive are you with gathering that knowledge so that people can support the vision? Because this is the primary reason. Mm-hmm. People in the organization that are contributing their brilliance to your leadership of an organization want to feel valued, appreciated, and supported. Mm-hmm. So in order for you to be able to move in an uncertain time, in a VUCA environment, you must look at the team and find out what type of leader are you. And if you are an inclusive leader, then you are literally I wouldn't want to say looking again, but you would kind of scope how you as a leader are approaching that level of inclusive committee that allows you to make better decisions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So today, the people in organizations really are finding are more interested in, and I think some of the research shows this, are more interested in, of course, everybody wants a paycheck, but what is more important, it seems, is what you identified as being valued, respected, recognized, appreciated, so that in an environment of value needs to be created by leaders today.
Right, because it's important to know how engaged are your employees. Mm-hmm. So if your employees feel valued, respected, and appreciated based on the way they contribute their brilliance to the organization, then they will be less likely. You can reduce the issue of them moving to a competitor. Mm-hmm. Okay? So in a competitive work environment, nurturing the community of people that work for you helps to reduce that issue of transferring or the retention issue. Mm-hmm. And again, we cannot control the mindset every generation has regarding how loyal they're going to be to an organization. However, I submit for people to consider that you can increase the amount of time they stay with you based on the fact that you are engaging with those employees in an inclusive way.
Mm-hmm. So, Dr. Towanna, what are the characteristics of an inclusive leader? What does an inclusive leader look like?
I almost don't want to say that they have to be, everything that I'm going to say and the only things that I want to say, but I'll give you the highlights, right?
Okay.
So they're people-oriented. They're great listeners. They are generally and authentically interested in what people have to say as they contribute their brilliance to the organization. So it is that authenticity and that genuine interest that really matters in an organizational and at all levels of the organization of leadership, managers and leaders. So to be focused on the individual contributor as well as the leaders that are key contributors at that level is wonderful. But the things that I love being an executive coach and that certify people in coaching, I tell my students two things that I promise them that I will help them do before they leave my classroom. One, learn to ask better questions. Two, be a better listener. That is inclusive leadership. Because if I can get you to improve to ask better questions, improve your curiosity, increase your curiosity, and improve your listening, then a byproduct of that is you being more patient, more understanding. So those two skills alone can impact the way a leader shifts for a more inclusive environment. And that's why coaching is such a powerful skill set today, and it's extremely popular now more than ever, and there's no signs of it not, continuing in this popularity. The demand is increasing because it's a skill set that we have overlooked and devalued as if it was too basic, and that many people, it's so basic that it's overlooked. But here, I always tell people, oh, that's just so simple. Well, if it was simple, we would be living in a different environment.
Exactly. We wouldn't need leaders.
That's right.
If it was simple and anyone could do it. So tell me, Dr. Towanna, what tell us about your childhood coming up, that those things that led you to be in this position where you're a coach trainer of coaches.
Right. So as far as my childhood is concerned, I'm one of three daughters in a family with two parents in a household. And I say that specifically in a black family because we know that that's not always common. So my grandparents were significant influence in my life, and my grandparents were sharecroppers. And my grandfather had a third grade education, and they valued education because they understood the limits that the lack of education put on them as farmers in rural North Carolina. And so I always give credit and honor to my grandfather and my grandparents because I understood what they had to journey through as far, when it comes to the civil rights movement and prior to that, the Jim Crow, and prior to that, indentured servanthood and slavery. So for me, I understand who I am and where I come from, and I also know the charge on my life and the gifts and talents that I was given as a child and as an adult, how everything I've always done has contributed to social change in some way. I stay in my lane according to my calling. So I recognize that I am able to gather people to create community for a common purpose, for change. I understand that, and I do that in the vehicle that I'm given, in the place that I am put. So I do not step outside of where I belong. So I always tell my students that for me it's important that I influence in the sphere of influence. I influence where I'm placed, and I do not move outside of that. So I use this as an analogy. As a child, I grew, and my parents insisted that I perfect my gifts and talents, so that as I grew and matured and became more exposed to world travel, because I traveled the world before I was 30, that I knew that there was a bigger calling, and I stood in the fact that eventually all of the details of my purpose would be illuminated, and it was. And so everything I did was a building block to the next thing. And so when I left corporate America and started my own management consultancy, it was because I had risen to the level of management where I was working with people more than I was with the technology. Because as a technologist, the higher you go in the organization, it becomes more about professional development than the actual product or service you offer. So I fell in love with professional development, and then that's when I transitioned into working with people, and that's when I moved into executive coaching, and then that's when I moved in creating community around coaching so that we can color coaching, because coaching was a majority Caucasian professional community of middle-aged Caucasian professionals, majority white female professionals. You follow me? So it was very, very specific. And so I wanted to color coaching. I wanted to shift that. And so I started to look for other coaches of color. And when we came together as a community, I then looked for opportunities for us to work together and grow together and build together. And once I perfected that in the Black Life Coaches Network, I then expanded the borders into other communities of color, the Latino community, the Asian community, the LGBTQ plus community. And when I did that, I created CoachDiversity Institute so that I can train more people of color to be in this profession, because I understand how powerful coaching is when used appropriately and when it's taught the right way.
So, as founder then of Black Life Coaches Network, and also as CEO of the CoachDiversity Institute, you know all there is about coaching, and you're training lots and lots of people in coaching. What is coaching? What is it? Define it for us.
Yeah, so it's wonderful to know that coaching, as far as the definition of coaching, it's funny is it's a form of development in an individual where a coach works with a client to support a client in goal achievement. Okay. Where the client is in control of what they want, when they want it, and how they want it. And the coach is a co-creator or a partner in helping the client with that goal achievement. And the coach, with the right skill, can help a client who is struggling with the outcome of that goal, that they help them to process through any challenges, frustrations, and obstacles that get in the way of them achieving their goal. Because so often people don't understand that they are not successful with goal achievement because they have not recognized the disempowering beliefs or the lack of courage to move forward because of fear, to move forward with goal achievement. Whatever the goal is, if it's not achieved, there are some reasons why. A coach helps to identify those challenges, frustrations, and obstacles that shift a client from feeling disempowered to empowered. And that's the co-creative process of coaching.
So give us an example in terms of what a coach would do with the areas you identified were the description of an inclusive leader. For example, you talked to us about how inclusive leaders need to be listeners. They need that increased capacity to ask questions. How would a coach help a leader equip him or herself with the skills and competencies needed to operate in this volatile environment?
Right, that's a great question. And the clients that we work with that come to us and ask us to provide them a bench of coaches for their organizations, we pull this community of coaches together and they begin to work one-on-one. Yes. And that is exactly where we are today, is how do we get leaders to be more inclusive? So a leader comes to a coach with these frustrations and challenges. And the first thing, most often, if they don't if the coach does not provide an assessment to find out what the current state of that leader is. Like, let's discuss who you are today. When they get that current state through that coaching and or assessment, then they're able to increase or enhance the skills they currently have, and then move to improving. So let's say a leader has, there was a 360 assessment feedback on a particular leader that illuminated the fact that they were terrible leaders, or they could be a toxic leader. They don't listen, they don't value. The coach is going to partner with the leader to, one, debrief that feedback and discuss what are some of the things that are contributing to this feedback. What are some of the things that you are experiencing as a leader that could be contributing to this feedback? So let's get a current state. And then when we talk about that, we want to reflect just for a minute about where that leadership style comes from. So let's take a quick look at the past, because a lot of leaders are mentored by another leader who was toxic or by another leader who was disruptive. And so the mentoring will then create a copy for that leader as in their current state are today. So we'll take a quick snapshot and say, okay, so where did this come from? So let's just say they're a self-made leader and they didn't have any mentoring or they were groomed and they just read it in a book. Again, whatever the past snapshot is, we look at current state, past state, and then we talk about, so what is it that you want to change based on all the information we have in front of us? And again, the question is, what do you want to change? Because if I said you have to change or you're going to be removed, he will just move on to another organization with the same behavior and be just as disruptive in a new organization. However, if you ask him what he would like to change and continue to ask better questions to become a bit more evolving so that the leader is contributing to the dialogue that will stir up the conversation to where they see where they're stuck, then that is a different type of learning. Because we always say the coaching skill is so smooth that a lot of times people solve their own problems while they're in dialogue. They solve their own problems before they realize what they've done. So it's unlocking so much by asking simple questions that people think that, oh, that's just a simple question. How could that particularly really make a move for transformation? You'll be so surprised that when you ask the question as simple as, what is it that you would like to change moving forward, can cause a leader to sit back and contemplate, well, I never thought about what I needed to change. I never thought about it. Okay, well, if you did want, if you could reflect on any of the things that happened before that you could have changed about your leadership style, what would you have changed based on that situation? So there's a formula for sure.
Yes.
Current state, past state. Now let's talk about the future state.
Yes, and the role of the coach to be that questioner, to help people, reflect on the past, why they are in the particular state they're in. But I thought that what you described as, okay, then back at you, what do you want to change? Again, keeping that focus on the individual, and the coach helping the individual arrive at the place where the individual needs to go or wants to go. And I think that, that whole co-creator, helper, as opposed to, I'm going to tell you what to do, because I'm hearing you say that is not the coach's role.
No, it's not. Coaches who advise, they're in a slippery slope, because when you are advising, now there is the ability to coach and advise. Okay, there is a formula for that, but how you do that is very particular, because you can be a former executive from another company who became an executive coach, and you are now contributing your brilliance to another executive as their coach, and you're taking the formula that works for you. Okay, and then you become an advisor. But what if you were wrong in your leadership style? Yes. What if you didn't have it all right, but your perception or that the feedback you received was always so wonderful, but Actually, it wouldn't work for this particular leader. Being mindful of how much you advise in a co-creating relationship as a coach is super important. Because what works for you may not work for this leader. So, again, asking better questions. Even when you want to give advice, hold back on that advice because it's not about you. No matter how much you want to see that leader win, no matter how vested you are in that organization, you cannot and should not, rather, to put yourself in a position where you want it more than the client.
Yes.
The client needs to want it more than you. You need to talk less and the client needs to talk more. You need to be less of an advisor and more of a co-creator. That's really the goal.
Less of an advisor and more of a co-creator. Yes, that, it just seems that you have just put that, what a coach is right into perspective. I love it, Dr. Towanna. As we wind down in our conversation, and I want you to come back and really, I'd love to dive even deeper into the work that you do and the work that you do with over 600 plus other coaches as you train and equip them to help leaders. I want you to say a little bit more about how you are coloring coaching, because I think that's the sphere, another sphere where the influence and impact that you're creating is enormous. So I want you to, I'd like to end our conversation with this. Why color coaching, and what do you think it will achieve for us as leaders and as we try to be equipped in this world of uncertainty?
Right. So coloring coaching means that there's more of a selection of coaches, just like you would select a physician, that you are able to find someone that you are comfortable with, then they look like you, have similar interests as you, have a similar background. So coloring coaching simply means giving the diversity in the coaching community so that I can have the coach of my choice, versus having to settle with a doctor or lawyer or a dentist that I am not comfortable with, where I have to be vulnerable, expose my inner workings with someone that I did not choose or do not have anything in common with. Coaching is a very intimate it can be very intimate, and it causes a client to sometimes be extremely vulnerable. Coaching and coloring coaching allows us to have a variety of coaches to choose from so that you can freely come into a safe space and be vulnerable for transformation. So coloring coaching for me, the ultimate goal was so that we can empower communities of color. So as well as I do, in the Black community, we typically went to mama and friends, the clergy, or we would speak to, I said best friends, mama, best friends, and clergy. Those are our primary community members.
Yes.
And if any of those members had dysfunction, they would share their dysfunction with you. Right? and you would then take the advice of that, and then you would move on and be just as dysfunctional, right?
Yes.
So it's one generation after another of dysfunction, and we were ignorant of that. We just loved the people that were giving us advice and support, and we believed that they were advising us correctly, right? So empowering communities of color means that we are opening the opportunity for you to get more of a variety of support.
And professional support.
That's right. That's right. And that allows you to say, you know what, just like in finance, we learned how to spend money from people who taught us how to spend money, earn money, and save money, multiply money. So the same is true when it comes to coaching. Coaches specialize in different things. They specialize in grief, divorce, health and wellness, executive leadership, career. There's such a variety of coaches in our world now that you can go to a coach for almost anything, right? And we don't move into the space of therapy. We don't move into the space of counseling, but we are right on we touch them both, but now we don't cross the line in the profession. We touch it just enough that we can still help to empower people to be stronger, to make better decisions, to be more empowered, to be more powerful. And that's what we need in communities of color, no matter what the community is.
Yes.
And we need that level of support. And we are coloring coaching so that we can make it more visible for anybody to get that support.
And you have the choice in getting that support so that you can add to the words of wisdom that you get from mom and preacher man and best friend. Because I don't think I hear you saying that we want to eliminate those support individuals and conversations from our lives, but we want to enhance the portfolio of support that we can get. And when we want to go to a professional for help, that we have a diverse pool from which we can select. And I think that is wonderful. Dr. Towanna Burrous, you are creating that impact through not only your coloring of the coaching profession so that you provide choices and options for people, but also because you are out there training hundreds of people to be professionals in the area. And that's how you're empowering communities. We so much love this conversation. I definitely want to have you back and want to dive even deeper into the skills and competencies that we as leaders need and how coaches can help us.
Absolutely. I would love to, Dr. Geneva. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And again, join us for the next time when we talk to influencers who really make a difference.
Ignite to impact.